And I stood up and I said that, no, we are not going to do this in 1 month.
What happened then?
He let the team go. So he said that team, I want to speak with Manali one-on-one.
Your personal problems are your personal problems.
And you are our first female hire.
If a manager consults with a team, this manager appears weak.
This alpha, high testosterone, entrepreneur, male CEO's energy.
In Russians like protocols. Don't laugh. Shut up. Hello everyone, thanks a lot for joining this video. So today, together with my dear friend Manali, we'll be discussing Russian and Indian working cultures. Both of us had many working experiences in our countries, and today we will kind of try to look for similarities and maybe some things that are different. Thank you, Manali, for joining me today. I'm very happy to have you.
I am so proud of Elena for doing this amazing, wonderful initiative that she has started. She has come a very long way.
You'll get me blushed from the very beginning, that's all right. We've prepared several questions to ask each other about the working culture and our experiences. We all both knew the questions in advance, but we did not share our answers just yet. So the questions are not a surprise. The answers most probably will be, but we'll see. And the first question is, tell us a little bit more about your working experience in India.
Okay, super. So my work experience in India, I have mostly worked with startups. And in startups, we have had clients which were bigger clients, but mostly my work experience in India has been working with startups, because of which I have learned a lot. I've grown in ways which are probably I would not have grown in a similar way had I worked in corporate.
True.
I have done a few different job functions, but that's how startups are, right? Like you get to put your feet into everything because everything is an emergency. It's like a ship which is sinking, which has holes, and you have to cover the holes and prevent the ship from sinking.
That's very true. That's true. I think in corporate you have to sell your soul to the devil if you want to switch a function, to be honest. In startup it's much easier.
I agree. It's like, oh, that's important. There's nobody to do it. I'll do it. So it's just more like more initiative driven as opposed to a role driven. But that has been amazing because I have been able to figure out what I want to do in my life. So that has been my experience, like a short overview of my experience in India. How
many years in total you worked in India?
In India, I worked for 5.5 years, but with 9 startups.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, like 9 startups.
Okay, it looks like we'll have quite a different take. So in my case, I used to work in Russia for 12 years.
No.
Yes, yeah, I started very early, and 9 of these years I worked in one company, and I also worked in several other companies afterwards before I moved to the Netherlands, to Europe, and I started working there. So in my case, all of that, most of that in IT, a little bit in HR. Wait, this is where I'm supposed to say I have a separate video where I explained how I moved from IT to HR and why I came back. So I will insert
the link somewhere.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's my working experience, and I think for last 6-7 years, maybe not 7 yet, maybe 6 years, I also manage people. So I started as a manager. I think in startup you manage people from like the 2nd year, just because it's the nature of the kind of the job. You just do everything.
I feel like in startups it's less of managerial and more of supportive. Yeah, because in startups you have to be there for each other. Like I feel like the clear distinction between subordinates and manager is quite blurred in startups. As compared to corporates, I feel so.
I think in Russia it's the same. We'll get to that in a second, but I think the difference between very like Russian company or maybe a governmental company and more startup-ish young organization, the difference is there. The difference is there.
So also, like, just to be very clear, these are just subjective experiences of ours. These are not generalizations.
No,
we are not claiming that this is how it is in Russia or this is how it is in India, but these are just our subjective experiences.
Okay, the next question is, how is Indian culture usually portrayed? Which parts maybe you agree or disagree?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think after I've come here to Europe, I was able to see like a bird-eye view of how people think about Indian working culture. And mostly people think that in Indian working culture, people are they are slogging. They work for like 12 hours every day. There are only developers or coders in India. They don't have work-life balance at all. That the Indian or the Asian work culture has really set the bar very high, and people from other countries or other continents find it difficult to match up to that level. This is what I've heard about the Indian working culture.
I think I've heard something similar, to be honest. And this is where I think there are potential similarities between Russian and Indian culture. So also after I moved to the Netherlands, I've heard different opinions or like cliches about the Russian culture.
Yeah, that's a good word. Cliches.
Yeah. So first, also Russians work a lot. If you're manager from Russia, you're rather, like bossy and rather strict. And also, I've heard the cliche that if you do business in Russia, all the main agreements are happening in saunas.
Sona kitna?
But you
Only Indian people know this reference, but I'm sorry.
If you drink vodka with your business partner, so
That
Russian
is
way.
so Russian.
This is like a cliche.
So cliche Russian opinion.
No one, thank God, no one in my life asked me to go to sauna with them. When I moved to the Netherlands, I received a few jokes here and there. Like, we're going for the meeting, let's like drink vodka or something. I mean, I understand that it's a joke, but it's rather stereotypical. Yeah, that's just the way it is. So I think these are the cliches that come to my mind when it comes to the Russian working kind of culture. So the next question is, how would you describe Indian working culture, not from the cliche and stereotypical point of view, but from your actual experience?
I think, okay, this is a good question. I think since I have had the chance to work with a lot of startups and a lot of different environments, my biggest experiences, I think, the most memorable ones were, okay, so I'll tell one experience of this one startup, okay?
All right, go for it.
Yeah, so I interviewed for this company and it was with the CEO. And the CEO says that, okay, congratulations, you are here and you can start from this day. But Manali, this is an all-male startup and you are our first female hire.
How many people were there?
There were 20 people. That was, I don't know how to describe it, but when
Did you feel intimidated?
No. But just a little bit, like, why didn't they hire a female before?
Why this is happening, right?
Yeah, maybe why this is happening. But I get it. It's like a tech startup. The industry also from which the startup belonged was also a very male-dominated industry, like the ones they were servicing. So I get it. But then I was like, man. That
says something about the culture. But would you say...
Sure. Like, not just that startup. So this startup was in a co-working space.
Okay.
And the co-working space in which this startup was there were majorly males. They were run by males. The head of the co-working space was also a male. So it was just like everywhere around me, I was seeing this male-dominated working culture. Surprisingly, I had some very good experiences working with this startup. I could also learn from other startups that were inside this co-working space. But I was like, man, female representation is just so important when we talk about especially startup culture as well. Yeah, we talk about female representation in male-dominating industries, but also in startups, I feel like it's so important because like on a daily basis, females are then just fighting gender biases. They have to make their voices to be sound and heard louder and stronger. And then it's just so male surrounded that you probably don't have anybody aspirational to look up to. Because if you
that's a big problem, yeah.
It's a big problem, and that's why female representation is just so important.
Would you say that it's common for Indian working culture? Do you think that it's everywhere? So generally women are less represented in the workforce?
I think like most of the industries, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because you already have that bias that, if it's a female, probably she cannot work during the night shifts, or maybe she has to adhere to her family's needs, or maybe she's going to be married or pregnant or stuff like that, so she won't be able to devote
our usual, like this is like the checklist, the usual one. She will get pregnant, she will get married,
So it's just the usual checklist. It's true. But I think since I've worked with so many startups in India, as opposed to also working with startups here in the Netherlands, I have seen more female representation, more female CEOs here
Yeah.
as opposed to in India. In my 5-6 years of startup experience, I had only one female manager and rest of them were...
No way.
Yeah. I just had one female manager. 9 startups, can you imagine that?
Damn it.
Yeah, just one female manager.
I think I even had more female managers than
in
male
corporate?
managers.
Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, so like you would say that in Russia, is that like a norm or no? It was just your company?
No, I think it's a norm. So you can find women in middle management, but not in the senior management. So this is a separate issue. We don't have a lot of women in the senior management.
I think, as I said, like I don't want to generalize, but like as far as my experience is concerned, and I worked in Mumbai, it is difficult to find female-led startups.
Ooh.
Yeah, it is.
Especially in tech, I suppose.
In
right?
tech, I worked with for a small ad agency. There were a lot of females in there, but for like tech-led startups, like the ones which were providing automation solutions, the ones which were in the real estate, hospitality industry, e-commerce and stuff like those, they were probably led by males. Yeah.
Can you describe, like, we're speaking about our experience, but what are the common traits of a Indian manager, a typical Indian manager from your experience? Like how it is usually?
I think not just like limiting it to managers, but also like working
culture,
working culture. I think it's very ingrained in Indian societies that there's no system in place to give constructive feedback.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as opposed to what I've seen here. Dutch people, they are super direct. Like if they think that something is not working, they will put it forth in a constructive way without hurting your ego, because the goal is
not always though. Not always though. Okay. Sometimes it's like borderline too straightforward, but still, yeah.
But like as opposed to in India, we try to sugarcoat things a lot. We try to be nice with each other. We don't like conflict. Indians majorly don't like conflicts.
Conflict avoidance.
Face-to-face conflicts that much. So we will probably try to say, hey, yeah,
can relate.
But you will bitch about that person at the back.
Because you have to sublimate this one way or another, right? You cannot say straight to the people's face.
We have just not been trained to have conflicts without fights.
Healthy conflicts, in a sense, constructive
and
ones.
with the aim that, even if we disagree here, the ultimate goal is to reach there together and not with a difference of an opinion. Constructive criticism or constructive feedback is avoided so that you don't get into a conflict, as opposed to here in Netherlands, where they will be super direct with you for feedback. Yeah. And the feedback will be also how you give feedback is just so important. If you're coming from a place of anger and frustration, the other person is probably going to be defensive and then they will feel hurt. But here in Netherlands, as far as I've experienced, they are very direct. They talk about the feedback in a very calm way, which doesn't look like attack to you, you know.
I've learned a long time ago, let's say, concept, I'm okay, you're okay, which kind of means that when I give you a feedback, it does not imply that there is something wrong with you or something wrong with me. Yeah. It's just a certain actions that should not necessarily represent you as a person, as a whole. It's just one specific action that you give feedback regarding, not the whole, not the whole person. That's why it's not a personal attack or anything like that. So I think actually Dutch people are good with that.
Yeah. Now the thing is, in startups, the way CEO behaves with the company sets an impression on all of the teams on how the teams also should behave, right? Yeah. So like there are no silos and stuff between the hierarchies or the teams.
Altogether.
So that's one very good thing about startups. And I remember like this one startup where I was working, it was my second day at work. We had like a meeting and there were 10-15 people in that meeting, and there were both the co-founders, the CEOs. Beginning of my career, I was super quiet, like this energetic person that I look right now. I was somebody who was very... I wouldn't share my opinions a lot. In India, mostly females are taught to shut up, speak less, talk less, walk less, just just like females are instructed with so many instructions that we probably keep our opinions to ourselves. And I think, thank God, I started working in startup culture, where I could change that.
You could actually break through that.
I could break through that, because people there really ask you your opinions, and if you don't, it does no good.
But I wonder, after you voiced over your opinion, is it actually considered?
So that's one incident that I was going to tell you.
Okay.
So this was like my second day at a startup. And the meeting was with 10-15 people of us. Then there were two CEOs, both the co-founders in that meeting. And the meeting was like 2 hours long, okay? And I didn't speak a single word in that meeting. Of course, I was paying attention and I was writing and stuff as well. But I just didn't say anything. And then by the end of the meeting, one of the co-founders, he came and sat next to me and he asked, Manali, what do you think of this meeting? I was, first of all, you want to know my opinion?
So that was unusual.
Because I was this was like second year of my working experience. This was like my second startup. And then he asks me what my opinion is. And first I was taken aback, but then I gathered some courage and I told him, I said, this 2 hours of meeting has been utter waste of time. If we have fewer people, we can do smaller meetings and we should actually strive to reach an outcome. And I was like, maybe I'm fired.
So this was the last day of Manali. This is why Manali switched so many startups in several years, right?
But to your surprise, what did he do? He called his another co-founder and he called him and he's like, if somebody who has joined us on the second day has observed this, how come we have not observed it with our startup?
But do you think it's kind of connected to the general practice of, avoiding giving feedback, avoiding saying something that is critical?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yes. Okay. And also this co-founder that I'm talking about, he was somebody who would look for constructive criticism. Now, had he not asked that question to me on that day, and
you wouldn't say.
This is 2017 or 18 that I'm talking about. So this is 7 years ago. And I think had he not asked that to me, I would have never learned that lesson that even if my opinion might not like somebody, it is important to
it's still
forward.
worth.
It's important to put forward that for the betterment of the company and for the meetings. And this is just going to take us better further. And I think him asking that question has been like, can you imagine? Even after 7 years, I remember that incident so carefully.
Yeah.
So now when I work here in Netherlands, I'm working for a big company. I am not afraid to put forward my opinion.
Yeah. Is there anything else that comes to your mind as the common traits between the managers that you used to have in India?
In few startups that I worked with, sometimes the managers, they really do not talk about how much pressure that they have from upper management.
They don't talk about it.
They don't talk about it. They like to keep it to themselves because mostly in Indian societies and mostly male managers, they have been told to just suck it up and don't show if you're going through some shitty situation. Like, don't cry about it, don't whine about it, just put your shit together and, So mostly male managers have that attitude that no matter how stressful the situation is for me, I will not let my team know about it.
But wait, so it's not coming from the idea that you can protect your team, but rather from the idea that you should appear tough?
I think it's both. But I have seen this one female manager that I worked with. She was so empathetic. Like she would get all of us in the room. So there's what you hear from upper management is what the lower management knows. But she was just so direct and she was so inclusive. And that really helped, I think, in startup, which I always say you should work in startups.
I have a question for you. I have heard something about Indian working culture that I want to verify.
Bring it on.
I have heard that for some reason it is expected from a manager to know the personal context of people that work for him or her, right?
Interesting.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of heard is this true?
I think, as compared to Dutch culture, I don't know how it's in Russia, but in Dutch culture, there is this unsaid rule that people really draw boundaries between their work life and their private life. People don't overshare things. In India, it's not
like that.
No, you have to appear that you really like your boss and you really like your team, and that also extends to sharing things about your personal private life. If you're too secretive about your personal private life, then there's something
suspicious.
Yeah, that's what I have seen.
Okay. That's interesting.
How is it in Russia?
I would say rather close to the description that you gave.
Yeah.
One of the cultural, I would say, features that I observed in Russia is if you have to pick up your kid after work and that's why you have to skip a meeting, there is a low tolerance to things like that. So people, they're like, no, you have to work. So like, or it's kind of portrayed as something unusual, or there's something that you have to, explain or justify. Your personal problems are your personal problems. Who gives a damn about it? Yeah, kind of like no one actually cares. Although I think your peers care.
Yeah.
But your manager would not.
Will not care.
Because there is a very distinct difference between how peers communicate and how you communicate with your management.
That is
very distinct one. I can speak a little bit about the Russian culture also from my observation. I think that there is a very big difference between international companies in Russia or like more modern, younger companies, more progressive ones, and traditional Russian companies, and specifically governmental companies. There are a lot of governmental organizations that you can work for. So I would say that if you work in the international companies, the culture would be a little bit more Western oriented, your Europe oriented. And of course there will be a difference, but it won't be that significant when you compare European working culture and like traditional Russian companies or governmental Russian companies. First of all, I think that in Russia, the working culture is, my God, I always confuse how you say this word in English, like hierarchical. So basically there is a hierarchical. Yes, so there is a lot of subordination. The power distance is there, so there is like a very distinctive, like difference between the attitude of a manager and subordinates. It's there. Your grade matters. What is in your role, if you're like director or senior director, it matters, it's important. And also I think that age matters as well.
I have a question here. Yeah, so if probably, since you have been in a managerial position in Russia as well, did you notice people taking you, because of your gender, maybe taking you less seriously? I
have managerial experience in both international companies in Russia and more traditional Russian companies. And I actually, when I used to work in a Russian company, it was a moment when I had one of the biggest teams. So it was like 18 people, maybe like 4 direct reports and the bigger organization below them. And all of them were male. All of them, not a single girl I had. I don't think I faced something very straightforward. So like no one would tell me anything directly. Okay. But what I've noticed is that I had to win my place or credibility in the eyes of my direct reports. So that happened for sure. My observation is Russian manager supposed to be like very autocratic, and by that I mean usually I think managers in Russia, like in this more traditional Russian companies, sometimes they tend to make decisions without consulting with anyone. So it's not a consulting with your team. It's rather, I may ask you a few things, but I will decide myself, this kind of style. And if a manager actually consults with a team too much, this manager appears weak. So because there is an idea that, like a good boss should be strong and firm and make decisions. So like how good of a manager are you if you're asking your team about things, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is quite typical for Russian working culture. So it's kind of expected from a manager to do that, to make this kind of decisions.
Whereas I think in Europe it's just exactly opposite. Like,
it's more of a consulting, so
you have to talk to your team, take feedback from everyone, make them feel included in the decision-making process.
Oh no, we don't know this word, no. We don't know that. I've never seen that it would be accepted for you to argue with your boss, especially if there is someone else. So for example, you're in a meeting together with other people, and it is very, very not accepted if you would argue with your boss or even disagree with your boss in front of someone.
Here?
In Russia.
In Russia,
Yes,
okay,
in Russia.
okay.
So because it feels like you compromise this authority of the leader, that of your boss. To be honest, even in international companies, I've seen this quite a lot. So people try not to argue with the manager. So it's better not to do it like at all. It's better not to do it at all, right? Because
I think like that's the similarity in
You think?
Indian and Russian culture, where you just cannot question the authority.
yeah.
It's just not something that's welcomed.
No, it's not welcomed at all.
Not at all.
In Russians like protocols, like generally like protocols. Don't laugh. Shut up. The point is, if there is a protocol for something, it is expected for everyone to follow it without questioning.
Yeah.
And if your manager is giving you some direction or is telling you what to do, it is expected for you to follow that without questioning it. So yeah, I wonder if it's the same in India.
I think it's somewhat similar in India, like not just in our working cultures, but like also in our societies, families, political systems, everything that you see, it's more like you cannot question the authority.
Yeah.
You cannot question the beliefs which have already been set up for centuries. It has been like that because it has always been like that. So just let it be like that. Like you cannot come up and question that. If you question something, it is seen more as a sign of disrespect. The feedback is not seen as, or the questioning is not seen as that, hey, maybe there's a better way to think through this, or maybe a better way to do this. But it comes more with that you cannot question this. It has always been like that and you are nobody to question.
And I think from what you say, like in Indian culture, it's always been like that. And in Russian culture, it's more your manager says that, then it's how to do it. So it's more like coming from the role, like the person in the role.
Yeah.
And this is like the very hard to, and I think like a lot of the features of Russian working culture is coming from this power dynamic. For example, in Russia, it is very common, like speaking about good things, a little bit about good things about the culture. You make a lot of friends at work. So for example, in the Netherlands, people don't make friends at work. They just don't.
I think in India as well. In India
you do, or you don't.
We make a lot of friends.
You make friends at work. You spend a lot of time working. You work. I think Russians work a lot. I think this is important. This deserves a clarification. It's not that Russians don't work hard. I think that quite often we're given such a ridiculous directions from our management that we're not allowed to question, that you have to execute it, even if you understand
either
that it's stupid.
Either by crook or whatever, even if you don't like it. Or
even if you don't like it, if you even understand that it's stupid, you just have to execute it. And this creates a culture of people who are manually working without making an extra effort at all, not because they don't want to, but because they know that their opinion would never be considered. They have to psychologically distance as much as they can from this and just execute because this is their job. And I know that actually people who are more kind of work in the Western culture, sometimes when they go to Russia, it is something that pisses them off. They have people like in services and everywhere around them who are doing everything according to the script and not doing an extra effort, even if they could, even when they could. To defend that, I want to say that I think that this is a derivative from the management style, because you're not allowed to say anything back, or even if you would, it won't change anything. It creates this feeling of internal, like, I think it's even called like self-learned helplessness. So you know that it doesn't matter, so that's why you won't make an extra effort. I wanted to speak about the good thing about the culture though, and then I went to the other way around. Good things are coming. So I think that's the level of camaraderie with your colleagues is very strong. Like people make friends, people get married when they work together. So it is super common. But with management, there is usually a boundary.
Yeah, for sure.
There is usually a boundary.
I think this, what you said reminds me of this one example of this all-male startup that I was working with. So there was this CEO and he said that, okay, we need to finish this project next 1 month. And clearly that project required minimum 3 months. But he's like, no, I have promised client, we will do it in 1 month. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Sometimes this alpha high testosterone entrepreneur male CEO's energy just doesn't make sense. It's just so destructive. for them personally as well, and
for
for
their
everybody
teams.
around, for family, for everything. It's just.
But yeah.
And I said that, do you understand, for this 1 month, for this to finish in 1 month, the team will have to work Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
So they will have to work 7 days a week for 1 month. Why do you want to do that? It's just going to lead them to burnout. And okay, this is not like they have always been working like that for months and months before as well. The team of developers, nobody could speak up and say that, no, I'm not ready to
No,
work.
I'm not doing that.
Because you're risking your job, you're risking your status signaling that
Especially
you
in the
have
startup,
within
right?
the team.
Yeah.
You don't know whether you will be given promotion or whether you will be given projects, or maybe you will be seen as somebody who is coward, or so this team of developers is not saying no. The CEO is there bombarding this unrealistic expectations on the team, and I stood up and I said that, no, we are not going to do this in 1 month. And I stood up in front of my team members and I said, we cannot do it. We have to talk to client. We will say that we need 3 months, because I cannot let this one project put my team into burnout and hating the job.
You were manager, right? At that point. So yeah.
So I was like the middle manager, and this was the CEO, and I was like, I cannot let my team get burnt out, hate their job, do not look forward to coming on Mondays, hate the colleagues as well. And also when you just overwork, probably you also make mistakes like QA, your quality takes a hit as well. So probably we might compromise on work that we deliver to client.
What happened then?
He let the team go, so he said that team, I want to speak with Manali one-on-one.
That doesn't sound good.
I was so sure that this was coming.
Can you please leave for a second? I want to speak to Manali alone.
Knew that what was coming, and I'm like, we can't do this. We genuinely can't do this, because I was noticing that when I joined the company, I was so skeptical of, oh my god, it's an all-male startup. Probably forget that people will not listen to me, but that people will not think of me as somebody that they can work with. Like, that was my bare minimum, And from there, I had reached to this point where I had built really good working relationships with people in that company. They were trusting me. They were trusting me with the challenges, and this is where I feel like we need more female managers or female leadership positions, because you start leading with a place of empathy, also putting realistic expectations, whether the project is not only promising to get us more money or more contract or renewal contract or something, but whether this is also healthy for my team.
But there are women who are doing the same.
I clearly know one example. Somebody on paper, if you read her qualities and her managerial style, she will sound like a typical male alpha dominating kind of a manager. But you know what actually makes females become like that? Because growing up all their life in professional surroundings, they had to deal with males who are like that.
And only if they behave like that, they're accepted.
If they don't sound strong, if they don't probably pull each other down, if they are not playing all the same rules of games which the men are playing, they will not lead to that position. So now then they become the game.
You said in this example that you were like in the middle management, and you know what? I recall that one of the relatively typical things in Russia is that middle management does not decide anything. So because of this rather autocratic management style, you always have people who are really in power. And one of the biggest sales challenges in Russia is to find a person who actually makes decisions. It's relevant for all the companies, like if you work in B2B, but in Russia, it's a separate challenge, because you never know if this person is actually making decisions or not. So basically you have this middle management who you can like invest a lot of time talking to, and it won't get anywhere. Or for example, you have managers who have more or less access to people who are actually make decisions, who are actually in power. And this is just a separate thing. So it kind of, it's just like a lot of different dynamics that comes from this the power distance everywhere in the culture. So I have a few interesting ones about the Russian culture, and I wonder if it's the same for India, but my observation is that in Russia it's usually expected for you to have technical skills if you manage a technical team. People usually make fun of managers who manage something that they don't know anything about. This is kind of what is like rather laughable. So it is expected for you to have the skills if you manage something.
I think in India what I've seen is that, as far as my experience is concerned, I think it is so important for you to have people skills. The technical skills will only take you as far as your
Oh,
role,
really?
yeah, as far as your role is concerned. But if you have people skills, if you know how to build good relationships with your colleagues, with your subordinates, with your manager, with upper management, that will probably accelerate your career. And this is what I think is different from, I think
it's different. Also, I know that in like rather traditional companies, sometimes you get the role not because of your managerial qualities, but because you work in the company for 15 years. And this is why sometimes you have managers who are not that qualified as like from a managerial skills perspective, but they're just very good experts. And sometimes people don't even want that. Like, I don't want to be a manager. I'm very good at doing something technical that I do. But what options do you have if you want a career? And also, again, because people are respected because of their role, it is important. Like, if you want to feel professional comfort, the system kind of pushes you to, in the end, accept a managerial role, even if you don't want to, because this is how like people are asking, like, you work there for 15 years and you're still not a manager. Oh, do you have something like that? I mean, in startups it's trickier, so it's a harder question for you.
I think in startups it's more, the shifts are more faster, vertically and horizontally both.
Yeah, it reminded me of this. Russian working culture is a risk averse. So we avoid, risk averse is avoiding risk, right? So it's avoiding risks. So we put the safety and stability much more, value it much more than, again, disclaimer, working culture that I observed, value it more than progress or potential gain. I think that's one of the reasons why managers are always given such a, like direct tasks to their subordinates. It's because it's kind of expected from you as a manager that your job is to mitigate the risks. And to mitigate the risks, it's better to give your employee, for example, I don't know, like you have a call center, it's better to give a script for any occasion than teach person how to actually solve problems, because this kind of comes from the concept of the risk aversion. There is one more thing that I want to ask you about, because I know that in Russian culture, sorry for the sound, we have our gentleman joining us. I will insert a picture. I wanted to ask you that, for example, in Russian culture, courtesy is rather important and people have a long memory, meaning that even many years down the line, people remember if you acted a certain way. So keeping it professional is very important, because people remember. You will work in different companies afterwards and you will meet each other once again and people will remember. Is it the same in India?
I think courtesy is a very small word for Indians. We believe in gestures, in grand gestures. We believe in flattering people around. We believe in making others special. We believe in making people feel good about themselves. And I think I've seen this, I'm not speaking just about the personal life but also professional lives as well, where you care a lot and you will go to great lengths to make your colleagues feel special, to make your bosses feel special, to make your teams feel special, as compared to, I feel like, Russian cultures. I think Indians are more like
gesture, you
more
have to
grand gestures, we are more of showing love and affection, and whether it's about bringing food for people, or whether it's about doing parties with them, or whether it's about just inviting each other for festivals and stuff. So I feel like
even managers. Because in Russia I think it's different, because in Russia you have to be approachable but still firm, because you have to show that you're a good leader, a professional, but strong, with a strong hand. So I think the base, the foundation of what is considered a good manager is different in Russia and in India.
I think and that's the good thing about
but I like this.
The good thing about Indian culture is that there's just a lot of camaraderie within the employees, whether it's with your managers. And I think this comes from my experience with startups mostly. You have a very good relationship with your managers, with CXOs, with your subordinates. You guys probably party together. You are there for each other. It felt more like I don't want to say family because I don't believe in that work is family or stuff like that, but I just felt like it was more of a
more connection.
I had like more sense of belonging to the surroundings than to the company, you know, like I felt that sense of belonging more to the group.
I think in Russia you would rather see something like that between peers, but not with your manager.
Yeah, I see.
Because the boundary should be there. Quick last note from Editing Me. Thank you so much for watching this video. It was a long one. I very appreciate it. And also please show the love and support to Manali. She was very open and honest about her working experiences and she deserves all the love in the world. And stay tuned for the second part. Bye.